Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you regarding the work that the Welsh Government has undertaken to tackle climate change, improve air quality and promote active travel and their links to safety. Although my role in the Welsh Government includes a number of areas linked to the climate change on strategic road network in Wales, including noise, decarbonisation and litter, my background is actually in traffic and road safety engineering, and in previous roles in Welsh Government and in consultants, I supported development of the now expired road safety framework for Wales in 2013 and setting local speed limits in Wales in 2009. First, I'd like to cover air quality and particularly the UK plans for tackling roadside nitrogen dioxide concentrations, which is the main document which covers how DEFRA and the rest of the UK devolved administrations will take steps to reduce concentrations of nitrogen dioxide, where the annual levels exceed the limit of 40 micrograms per metre cubed. That legal limit was set out in European Directive 2008/50/EC, which was transposed into UK and Welsh legislation via the Air Quality Standards Regulations in 2010. A number of High Court challenges have been brought against the UK government by environmental lawyers Client Earth on the basis that this plan does not set out the appropriate actions required to ensure legal compliance with the directive in the shortest possible time. Initially, the challenges were solely against UK government, although references were sometimes made to some of the devolved administrations. In the December 2017 challenge, the Welsh Government was directly named. So as part of that challenge and the outcomes, we conceded that the element of the plan for Wales was unlawful on the basis that though the measures were applicable to Wales, they did not go far enough to demonstrate that legal compliance could be achieved in the shortest possible time. So we were therefore directed by the High Court to publish an interim supplemental plan by July 2018 and then publish our final plan by October 2018. In order to comply with that direction, we took immediate steps to help establish the route to compliance in the shortest possible time at 5 locations on the strategic road network in Wales and 2 on the local road network. 5 locations on the SRN in Wales included 2 in North East Wales and 2 on the M4 in South Wales, and one of the local road networks was in the middle of Cardiff city centre. So to identify that route, we undertook detailed investigations using the approach set out in the Welsh Transport Appraisal Guidance WELTAG in December 2017. And we also directed the local authorities to undertake similar studies for the 2 local road network locations. So yeah, these WELTAG investigations identified that there were several measures that met 3 key criteria, including ability to reduce NO2 levels in the shortest possible time and their applicability to the strategic road network. And these investigations concluded that a 50-mile-per-hour speed limit could be applied to all 5 locations and have the potential to yield immediate air quality improvements. So we took the decision to implement these speed limits on an interim trial basis on spring 2018. 4 locations were set via temporary traffic regulation order with a maximum 50-mile-per-hour speed limit set overnight on the M4 at Newport by the existing variable speed limit system. The limits were signed in accordance with Chapter 8 of the Traffic Signs Manual, but with no enforcement or any speed monitoring. We did undertake enforcement of the variable speed limit, but that was done for other reasons such as road safety and to support congestion management. The other 4 locations were previously subject to the national speed limit. Early discussions with the police were considered essential regarding enforcement, as generally in Wales particularly, enforcement for reasons other than road safety was a significant step change. And then following publication of the final plan, the 50-mile-per-hour speed limits were retained, but with a provision of average speed cameras to help ensure 24/7 compliance. In terms of the choice of 50 miles per hour as the optimal speed limit, this outcome was identified through detailed modelling, including analysis via the DEFRA emissions factor toolkit. ANPR data was recorded at all 5 locations, which established that light-duty vehicles were the dominant user of these routes, and that their tailpipe emissions were established to be at their lowest around 81 to 82 kilometres an hour. We are in regular discussions with our counterparts in Highways England regarding the 60-mile-per-hour trials that are currently ongoing, but we understand that the fleet mix on the English network is slightly different to Wales, and also that the HE have been able to carry out greater research than we were afforded on the basis that steps had to be taken to achieve compliance in the shortest possible time. So to support that decision, installation of the permanent speed limit sign and layouts and average speed cameras, but with green coloured shields, were installed during summer 2019, and discussions with the police and GoSafe completed over potential enforcement. Unfortunately, those discussions concluded that enforcement at the time of the works being completed was not considered appropriate, principally on the basis that it had taken several years for the police and colleagues with GoSafe to get good support for enforcement in Wales, and particularly in the view that compliance could be directly attributed to making a positive reduction to collision reduction. However, though, since their installation, the cameras have acted as a good visual deterrent with mean speeds around 49 miles an hour. However, the number of vehicles travelling around 50% plus 2, sorry, 10% plus 2, so 57 miles an hour plus, is still high in some of the locations. Yeah, the data that we've recorded from these locations are established that whilst the speed limits have helped improve air quality, 4 of the locations on the SRN are still within exceedance. However, a good development is that agreement has now been reached with the police and GoSafe that a move towards issuing advisory notices should now commence as the next step towards promoting compliance. As Teresa mentioned earlier this morning, the content of the notices is currently being prepared, but is likely to include information on the links between public health and poor air quality. We do appreciate that enforcement may still be required in the future, but by emphasising that greater compliance may see these limits lifted sooner, hopefully that will be the sort of view that people will see that compliance is there for their benefit. Unsurprisingly, our speed limits have generated significant interest, including queries surrounding low and ultra-low emission vehicles. However, at the moment, there are no plans in Wales, at least, to exclude any vehicles from the speed limits due to the safety concerns associated with the speed differential. For example, the increased braking distances between 70 and 50 miles an hour, and also the fact that some models, in fact, more and more mainstream models of electric cars are looking identical to the petrol and diesel powered versions, and that could end up leading to driver confusion. They can't understand why their petrol Volkswagen Golf has to travel at 50 miles an hour, and exactly the same Volkswagen Golf that is an electric model is bombing past them 20 miles an hour faster. Moves us then on to the climate crisis. Yeah, and in 2019, we published our low carbon delivery plan, Prosperity for All, a low carbon Wales, which demonstrates a commitment to tackling climate change across a number of sectors and sets out the path to net zero by 2050. This plan sets out our approach to cut emissions and increase efficiency, and it includes 100 policies and proposals that may reduce emissions and mitigate the effects of climate change. The transport sector in Wales accounts for around 40% of the total carbon dioxide emissions, with 11.9% of that being from cars, light trucks and heavy trucks. From the wider highways and management perspective, though, whilst the transport sector is the main focus, it is important to note that the construction of these highway projects sits within the industry sector. However, in addition to the uptake of cleaner vehicles rapidly increasing in some areas, the number of journeys being undertaken in Wales by motor vehicles has also increased year on year. And we understand that since 1990, transport emissions have only reduced by around 3%, but actually in Wales between 2015 and 2016, it was estimated they actually increased by 2%. Obviously, with the impacts of COVID-19, we are expecting to see a slowing down on the purchase of new motor cars, and with home working becoming more of the norm, less journeys may end up being taken by the car. Yeah, in terms of the roadmap to net zero, the plan includes detailed guidance on how the Welsh Government intends to reduce its transport-related emissions, including the setting of 5-year carbon reduction budgets. A 43% overall reduction in carbon emissions is to be achieved by 2030, including a number of actions, including behaviour change, a greater uptake of low-emission vehicles, and further fuel and vehicle efficiency measures. Something to bear in mind is that Welsh ministers have recently agreed more stringent and challenging targets, and a revised action plan outlining these and suggesting how these may be achieved is currently in preparation. Ultimately, though, Welsh ministers consider that the key to reducing transport-related emissions is to stop the over-reliance on the motor car. However, ministers also accept that in Wales this will be challenging in many areas, particularly in our rural communities, where potentially motor vehicles are the only option for travel. Yeah, so following that path to net zero carbon in the UK certainly has the potential to impact on road safety, both positively and negatively. And whilst the key to promoting modal shift in particular is accessibility, simply providing additional facilities such as active travel routes and greater bus frequencies is just not enough. And the success of these interventions will ultimately be measured on future usage, and facilities that end user considers to be unsafe when using are likely to fail in the long term. And in terms of unsafe, in my view, it covers a wide scope and could include things like a lack of comfortable segregation, a lack of connectivity, personal safety. See, low and ultra-low emission vehicles are also already having an impact on road safety in the UK, and as technology rapidly develops, greater education and awareness is fundamental if we are to continue reducing the number of people that are killed and seriously injured on our roads. Since July 2019, people may be aware, vehicle manufacturers must now install an acoustic sound system in new types of quiet electric and hybrid electric vehicles. In addition, as we continue with the development of autonomous vehicles, we must be prepared for the potential road safety impacts that these may well create. Yeah, linking with decarbonisation and climate change has impacted significantly in a number of locations on the SRN in Wales, with regular closures of routes during recent severe flood events, premature structure deterioration and embankment slope failure. Continued increases in temperatures and rainfall, along with these extreme weather events, will create further issues, although potentially not all may be considered as a negative from a road safety perspective. I suppose examples of that could include that with average temperatures increasing, you will see less severe cold weather events, but also drier and warmer weather may also promote active travel and physical activity. Yeah, lower speed limits certainly provided to help to reduce carbon impacts and in mitigation of climate change related issues may also yield secondary road safety benefits. And as some people may be aware, as part of their review of the carbon impact of the National Road Programme in England, an enforced 60-mile-per-hour limit on the English SRN has been recommended by the group Transport for Quality of Life on the basis it has the potential to support carbon reduction. However, ultimately, as with all speed limit changes and with a good number of road safety interventions, work will need to be done if we are to achieve acceptance and compliance. Yeah, so moving on to now active travel. I think I skipped one slide there. Yeah, so to support the Active Travel Act in Wales, we have produced direction and guidance to those involved with active travel routes, including the planning, design and construction, the future maintenance, and the Welsh Government has also published further guidance documents. However, the design guidance principally focuses upon getting the basics right through better planning, good infrastructure, appropriate engagement and funding. Further guidance is also under preparation at the moment that covers how the needs of pedestrians or cyclists are to be catered for when street works are being undertaken. In addition, the rapid uptake of e-bikes presents a new set of issues for those responsible for promoting and developing active travel initiatives. In terms of aspirations for the future, by 2030 in Wales, the following is predicted to be the norm. Over 75% of people in Wales are to make at least one walking trip more than 10 minutes a week, ideally with an average of at least one person doing that per day. At least 50% of shorter trips up to 5 miles are undertaken by walking or cycling, and at least 1/3 of people are travelling actively to work. Also, 50% of young people will be travelling actively to school, with a target of 75% for primary school ages. And although in Wales good progress has been made, there are still many issues to overcome, including the continued perceptions of safety and practicality. However, a cross-party group of Welsh ministers has recently produced an active travel framework manifesto with support from sustrans in Wales that all parties are asked to consider ahead of the forthcoming Senedd elections. Moving on, some people may be aware, a common barrier to active travel being a realistic and feasible option for many in urban areas is the speed of motor vehicles, and this was a really useful discussion we had during earlier lunchtime breakout session. In May 2019, Welsh ministers formed a task group force to help establish the outcomes which would be expected from changing the default speed limit for restricted roads in Wales to 20 miles per hour. That group subsequently produced a final report which established that making 20 mph the default urban speed limit in Wales could promote active travel and lead to a significant reduction in road danger. A default 20 mph speed limit also has the potential to yield slight improvements in air quality and support carbon reduction, although these are principally through drivers choosing to abandon their cars and picking more sustainable transport forms such as walking and cycling. In terms of where we are at the moment, in February, it was announced that 8 locations across Wales, including one on the strategic road network, had been chosen to pilot these 20 mph speed limits. As Teresa briefly covered earlier this morning, the pilots will focus on community engagement, as their success will ultimately depend on the communities and the road user understanding the value of the new speed limits. However, not all urban roads will be reduced to 20 mph though, and an exceptions process is being developed to help identify those urban routes that may remain at 30 miles an hour. Again, as Teresa briefly covered this morning, the enforcement strategies will also be developed through the pilots, and as particular of interest is that with intelligent speed assistant technology rapidly moving forward, this will play a key part in the future. We are also in the process of preparing further guidance on interventions and steps to support compliance. So we're looking at design guidance for local authorities on typical engineering measures that may be required to support lower traffic speeds on those restricted roads. And we are also looking at providing additional funding for those communities to help them plan, design and implement low-cost changes to local streets, which can improve local places, help develop stronger community cohesion and ultimately achieve lower traffic speeds. Just one final thing to cover, Llwybr Newydd, the new Wales transport strategy, which was published a few days ago, which sets out how the Welsh Government will create a transport system that is accessible and sustainable over the next 20 years. Active travel and climate change, including air quality, decarbonisation and noise, are the key drivers of the strategy, with a focus placed upon making transport safer and encouraging more people to walk and cycle. Other areas referenced in the plan that could impact on road safety include taking action to tackle pavement parking, road user charging schemes, and connected and autonomous vehicles. However, something that sits in the back of the mind is that the 2021 Senate elections are going to be held on the 6th of May, and potentially, depending on the outcomes of that elections, that strategy could well change. However, sort of looking at the manifestos from the various parties, transport, and particularly road transport, is a key theme in all of them, although how each party sees transport in the future is broadly similar, with most agreeing that modal shift is essential to protect our future generations. Only one party, though, has made a commitment to carry out major improvements to the strategic corridors in the south, north and west, and it would be interesting to see how these may be implemented if that party is successful at the elections. Thank you very much.